I want to take a moment to acknowledge how lucky we as a community are to have a writer like Kate Orman writing for Doctor Who. Like, Kate Orman, genuinely, with the quality of work she's put out over the past couple of years, she could be writing, like, the next Dune, or, like, the next Space Odyssey. But no, she's here writing a Season 7 Doctor Who story for Big Finish. Like, we are blessed. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and today we have another Doctor Who Big Finish audio novel review. For those of you who for some reason don't know, Big Finish, they do full-cast audio dramas, but they also release these audio novels, which are 6 to 7 hour audio stories narrated by a single actor, or in the case of the Chaos Cascade, multiple actors. And generally, the quality of these is pretty high, but I have one consistent complaint across basically the entire range, that they're all too long. While you do have very real highlights like Prisoners of London or The Dead Star, I think basically every single release could have been benefited if you slice one part out of these multi-part stories. So going into The Mirror Matter, written by Kate Orman and narrated by John Coleshaw, I was wondering if that would fall into the same issue. Because obviously with this lineup, with the Third Doctor, with the Brigadier, with Liz Shaw, this is meant to be a Season 7 story, and these stories are, traditionally speaking, very long, with the exception of Spearhead from Space. So if there's any audio novel that justifies being 7 parts or 7 hours long, it could be this one, The Mirror Matter. But we'll save that for later. So The Mirror Matter, as I mentioned earlier, takes place in Season 7. The Third Doctor is earthbound, he can't use the TARDIS, and he's working as the head of Unit's scientific division alongside companion Liz Shaw under the Brigadier. And the inciting incident is that a strange alien blob, an alien spore, has manifested on Earth. It's like this strange void null space that's hovering like 4 or 5 feet above the ground. And spoiler warning, it turns out to be a form of mirror matter, a hypothetical form of matter, different from regular matter and antimatter. And it starts causing havoc to the local area. People walk through it, they get trapped and mulched by it, it starts moving around on its own and affecting everything around it. So it's up to UNIT to investigate what's going on and whether or not it can be destroyed and if it's sentient or not. However, things are made more complicated with an organisation who is also aware of the spore called the BNKR, and it's a joke in the book that they don't even know what the initials stand for, so I don't know what BNKR stands for. They're essentially an apocalypse cult. They're getting ready for nuclear Armageddon or climate change or whatever to destroy the world so that they can repopulate and build society up again when that happens, and they want to make sure that the spore does not fall into the hands of the military and the UK government, who want to try and utilise it as a weapon in some form. But it's a race against time when multiple spores start appearing on Earth and they start communicating with each other and interacting with each other.
Liz was puzzling over how they could take a sample of the substance, scoop some up, like a spoonful of pudding, said Gree, half-jokingly. But then, how would you know whether you've got something on your spoon? Liz knew the Doctor was prone to impatience. But when he waved his hand through the object, her heart actually skipped a beat. "Don't!" she yelped. Her stomach clenched. The Doctor's hand had disappeared. "Oh, now this is interesting," he said. He pulled back, but his hand was still missing, as though it had been cleanly erased from existence. Liz took a deep, deep breath and said, Can you still feel your hand?" "I'm wriggling my fingers right now," said the Doctor. "It feels as though they're covered in jelly." "Put it back," said Liz. "See if the mass will reabsorb the part that's on your hand." The Doctor plunged his hand back into the invisible blob, then withdrew it slowly. His hand reappeared, quite unharmed. "It's like it's teasing us," Liz managed to say. "That was a crazy thing to do," said Gree. The fright had made her furious. "Crazy!" "Yes, well, perhaps," said the Doctor, who did look very pleased to have his hand back. "But we know more about the object than we did before I tried it."
The big comparison point for me with The Mirror Matter is the Dead Star audio novel, and I don't think it's a coincidence that these are both written by Kate Orman. The Dead Star is a Second Doctor, Ben and Polly audio novel which revolves around black holes, and it's a really great existential sci-fi horror, and The Mirror Matter is working with similar material, where it's more about an existential threat to life and strange cosmic horror, hence utilising a completely different form of matter that we're used to on Earth, and we're trying to understand it and communicate with it. Is the mirror matter a force of nature, or is it some strange being who we can't even begin to comprehend? And surrounding all of that, we've got a pretty effective cast of supporting characters. We've got Professor Joan Gree, who is an American expert in exotic matter. We've got a lab assistant, James Lee, who is revealed to be a member of BNKR, and it's led by Philip Qualtrough, who's this charismatic cult leader who is more silent than anything, but has a vice-like mental grip over his followers. There's also another unit soldier called Private Micklewhite, and I got surprisingly attached to him, to the extent where I think it could be fun to add him into future Season 7 Big Finish stories. You know, get John Culshaw to voice him. If you're doing a Season 7 story, you've already got him for the Brigadier, have him in for Micklewhite. I was not expecting to go into the Mirror Matter and get attached to an incredibly original new character. And honestly, I really, really enjoyed the Mirror Matter. And one part of my enjoyment of it is that I really could genuinely imagine this being a Season 7 story, like authentically made in the 1970s, whereas I really couldn't for the Dead Star. That's not me trying to disparage the Dead Star, I just can't imagine in the late 60s the Doctor Who creative and production team being able to make a production like the Dead Star, but I think that they could for the Mirror Matter, and that adds a nice bit of authenticity for this era of the show that they're trying to recreate. And there's some really nice character-led scenes. There's a great sequence early on when the Doctor is driving the Brigadier in Bessie to the next location, and we get this internal thought process and internal monologue of the Brig being grateful that the Doctor is on their side. And also later on in the story, when Lee gets separated from Qualtrough, I won't get into spoilers, we get a look into his thought process and just how empty and rudderless he feels without his leader. And I think the Mirror Matter could have gone the incredibly cliche route of the villainous cult leader being the big main bad antagonist, and thankfully it does not go in that direction. It's much more interested in the thought process of the followers who are left behind. There's a really clever use of structure as well, like putting the flashbacks establishing a character relationship after that character has seemingly disappeared from the story to really hit home the loss and the human impact of that. But much like the Dead Star, I think where Kate Orman really excels when writing this audio novel is with the cosmic horror set pieces. There's some brilliant body horror, particularly the cliffhanger ending to Part 2, which is bloodless, and they probably could have broadcast it in the early 1970s, but they definitely would have got complaints. There's a brilliant extended sequence in Part 3 when one of the spores is just drifting in a straight line towards a specific destination, and it's just causing havoc to this small country village on its way, and just how it impacts the people around it and what it's doing, really effective. Like, it's almost like a filler chapter, but it really, really is effective. All of these great sequences bolstered by a really effective soundtrack by Richard Fox. However, and say it with me now, it is one part too long. This is a 7-parter, it's over 7 hours long. I genuinely think you could have excised one episode from it, as in not just like one episode in totality, but like trimmed maybe 10 minutes from each episode and then you've sliced off a whole piece. Because as we get to Part 6, the story really does start to drag as the structure struggles to find a climax or an end game in sight. With Part 6 culminating in an ending cliffhanger that is honestly pretty ridiculous. I feel like if the TV series did a cliffhanger like this in the early 1970s, it would be routinely referenced and mocked, like even decades from now. It just did not land. It was almost inadvertently comical. But that being said, even though the story is starting to lose momentum in Part 6, it's still peppered with some really lovely character beats. There's a really great short scene where the Brigadier is helping to evacuate nearby citizens from the danger zone of Mirror Matter, and as someone who isn't scientifically minded and can't, shoot his way out of this scenario, he is earnestly, genuinely happy that he can still help out. There's even a throwaway sentence early on where we learn that the Brigadier has been reading through scientific journals, not because he understands it, but because he just wants to kind of keep up with what the Doctor and Liz are doing, and he wants to contribute more to their conversations. It's so adorable, I wanted to die. But when we got to Part 7, was I ready for it to end? Yes. Was it partly because I'm a Big Finish reviewer and I wanted to move on to Smith and Sullivan Reunited? Also yes, but I do think that if this was a 6-parter instead of a 7-parter, it would be a net benefit to the overall story. But honestly, I kind of feel like I'm nitpicking at this point. The Mirror Matter is probably my favourite Doctor Who audio novel since Kate Orman's The Dead Star 2.5 years ago. I really do love her work of hard sci-fi and existential horror in the Doctor Who universe. I think she's absolutely terrific. John Culshaw is of course predictably great as the narrator. I feel like I haven't really talked about him much in this review, but you know he does a great Pertwee, you know he does a great Brigadier, you know he's a great orator. And while the length of this audio novel, and honestly all of the audio novels, are a little bit of a deterrent to me recommending the audio novel sometimes, I will say if you do have nostalgia for the early Pertwee era, if you do have nostalgia for the unit days of Doctor Who, or if you do just love high concept sci-fi, I unambiguously recommend The Mirror Matter. It's a really, really strong audio novel that's really faithful to the time period of Doctor Who that it's wanting to recreate, with some really wonderful character beats and moments. It really is the full package. Maybe a little bit too much of a full package. Like I said, it is maybe one episode too long, but I had a really great time with it. What do you folks think of Doctor Who The Mirror Matter? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like and subscribe for more upcoming Doctor Who Big Finish reviews. And folks, I'll see you all next time.